The Ukraine-Russia war has entered the blind eye phase. Ukraine targets Russia's strategic radars to cripple its air defense network. The Voronezh-M radar at Armavir, Russia's biggest eye, became the ultimate prize. In 2025, a Ukrainian drone strike shook Russia's defenses, unleashing a chain of horrifying events. Below is the account, from the explosion on the radar hill to an outcome that left the world breathless. On a foggy night in 2025, the 50-meter-tall Voronezh radar towered over Armavir's hill. A swarm of Ukrainian drones armed with armor-piercing warheads flew low, evading defenses and slamming into the antenna tower. The first blast tore through the steel frame, shockwaves rippling hundreds of meters, the antenna collapsing like an ancient tree struck by lightning. Debris rained like metal hail, fire erupting into a colossal fireball, black smoke choking the night sky. Russian troops fled bunkers in panic, alarms screaming. The radar went blind in seconds, a vast airspace left without warning. Russia struck back instantly. Kinzhal missiles from MiG-31Ks streaked across the sky, obliterating Ukrainian drone bases in Zaporizhia. Su-57 jets flew low, dropping guided bombs on supply depots. Ukraine countered with Storm Shadow missiles, destroying a replacement radar station in Rostov. A ferocious air battle erupted, jets clashing amid missile fire, a Su-57 exploding mid-air. Black smoke and debris fell like rain, turning the border into a chaotic war zone where every second was life or death. The conflict surged into biological warfare with terrifying speed. Russia launched missiles carrying genetically modified viruses into Ukrainian bases, pathogens spreading rapidly and paralyzing troops. Ukraine retaliated with drones, dispersing metal-eating bacteria, striking Russian missile depots. Russian hackers leaked Ukrainian medical data, while Ukraine seized control of Russian biolabs. On the ground, soldiers collapsed in agony, AI drones colliding and bursting into biological fireballs. The war expanded as NATO intervened, turning the border into a multi-layered death zone. Russia launched a massive ground offensive, T-14 Armata tanks rolling to seize Ukrainian cities. Ferocious urban battles erupted in Kharkiv, buildings crumbling under fire. Ukraine ambushed with suicide drones, incinerating Russian armor. A massive biological explosion destroyed a weapons depot, contaminating soil and displacing millions. Neighboring nations were drawn in, Poland invoking NATO's Article 5. Satellite imagery showed vast regions shrouded in biological haze, marking an unprecedented phase of savage warfare. The fallout triggered a global alliance crisis. NATO fractured as some members refused to fight, sparking violent protests across Europe. Russia and China formed a new bloc, threatening to cut gas supplies. The US and EU convened emergency summits, but biological insurgents rose from the chaos. Autonomous robots cleared contaminated zones, relief convoys delivering supplies under fire. Russia and Ukraine were forced into a temporary ceasefire by international pressure, but new alliances and persistent bio-threats signaled a fractured world order. The Ukraine-Russia war has seen numerous surprise attacks, with Russia's superports emerging as critical strategic targets. Ukraine often leverages intelligence to time its strikes, while Russia holds celebrations to boost morale. In 2025, a Ukrainian attack on a Russian superport during a commander's celebration shifted the war's dynamics, shocking the world. Below is the account of this confrontation, from a perfectly timed ambush to an unexpected outcome that left everyone reeling. On a crisp evening in 2025, at the Novorossiysk superport on the Black Sea, Russian senior commanders gathered for a victory celebration, complete with vodka and fireworks. Ukraine had been monitoring through intelligence, waiting for the moment when all were present.
Ukrainian reconnaissance drones glided silently, confirming the target. Suddenly, a 3,000-kilogram guided bomb from a Ukrainian jet screamed down, piercing the port's concrete defenses. The explosion shook the sea, debris flying like a tempest, and the superport collapsed in a blaze of fire. Alarms wailed across Russia. Rescue teams scrambled, but the devastation was immense. The battlefield turned into a fiery abyss, setting the stage for a ferocious naval port war.
Russia struck back instantly, launching caliber missiles from nearby warships, pounding Ukrainian positions in Odessa with devastating force. Russian Su-34 jets roared in, dropping bombs on Ukrainian bunkers, shaking the city to its core. Ukraine countered with lightning airstrikes on Russian bases in Crimea, targeting munitions depots. A brutal air battle erupted, with jets from both sides clashing in deadly chases. Black smoke choked the sky, relentless explosions trembling the ground, transforming the Black Sea into a chaotic war zone where every minute pulsed with danger. The conflict surged into hybrid naval-air warfare with terrifying speed. Russia deployed nuclear submarines to hunt Ukrainian fleets, triggering radioactive leaks and underwater clashes. Ukraine retaliated with underwater drones, destroying Russian ships in massive subsurface explosions. In the skies, AI-driven drones collided, bursting into fireballs that illuminated the night. Ukrainian hackers infiltrated Russian command systems, disrupting submarine orders, while Russia countered by crippling Ukraine's power grid. The war expanded as allies joined, turning the Black Sea into a multi-layered flashpoint where naval and air forces fused in pandemonium.
Russia launched a massive ground offensive, aiming to seize Ukrainian ports to dominate the Black Sea. Tank convoys rolled into Mykolaiv, sparking ferocious urban battles. Ukraine responded with rapid ambushes, using guided missiles to incinerate Russian armor. A colossal explosion destroyed a Russian nuclear depot, unleashing radioactive fallout and displacing thousands. Neighboring nations were drawn in, with Turkey bolstering its borders. The global economy reeled as oil prices skyrocketed from disrupted shipping routes, and satellite imagery showed vast regions shrouded in smoke, marking an unprecedented phase of savage warfare.
The attack's fallout triggered a global humanitarian crisis. Destroyed infrastructure forced millions to flee, flooding borders into Europe and Russia. Refugee camps overflowed, diseases spreading in the chaos as international aid struggled to keep pace. The US and Europe organized emergency relief, but insurgent groups exploited the turmoil to rise. Autonomous robots cleared radioactive zones, while relief convoys delivered supplies under fire. Russia and Ukraine, facing humanitarian disaster, were forced into a temporary ceasefire, but new rebel factions emerged from the chaos. The crisis paused the war, but swelling refugee flows and persistent disease threats signaled an unstable future.
The Ukraine-Russia war has seen bold attacks on military strongholds, with Russia's fortresses serving as critical defense hubs. Ukraine leverages precise intelligence to target key assets, while Russia bolsters its facilities with advanced technology. In 2025, a sudden Ukrainian strike on a $180 million Russian fortress shook the region, unleashing unforeseen consequences. Below is the account of this confrontation, from a devastating assault to an outcome that stunned the world.
On a frigid night in 2025, at a heavily fortified Russian fortress in the Donbas region, Ukrainian forces launched a surprise attack. The $180 million stronghold, equipped with laser defenses and advanced radar, was a pivotal command center. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones silently tracked movements, confirming Russian commanders were gathered for a strategy meeting. Suddenly, a salvo of precision-guided missiles from Ukrainian drones screamed down, piercing the fortress's concrete shell. The explosion rocked the earth, flames erupting like a volcano, debris flying like a metal storm. Alarms wailed, but the fortress crumbled in a sea of fire, transforming the battlefield into a chaotic inferno that heralded a brutal war.
Russia responded with devastating force. Su-35 jets roared from nearby bases, dropping bunker-busting bombs on Ukrainian positions in Kharkiv, shaking the city to its foundations. Iskander missiles launched from land targeted Ukrainian bases, obliterating logistics hubs in thunderous blasts. Ukraine countered with suicide drones, striking Russian munitions depots, triggering secondary explosions that lit the horizon. A fierce air battle erupted, with jets from both sides clashing in blazing streaks across the sky.
Black smoke smothered the heavens, relentless explosions splitting the ground, turning the Donbass into a nightmarish war zone where every moment was laced with death. The conflict escalated into biological warfare with terrifying speed. In desperation, Russia deployed biological agents from secret facilities, releasing toxins into Ukrainian cities, sparking rapid disease outbreaks. Ukraine retaliated by destroying Russian biolabs with guided missiles, inadvertently unleashing pathogens into the air. AI-driven drones clashed in the skies, bursting into fireballs that illuminated the night. Ukrainian hackers infiltrated Russian command systems, disrupting bioweapon deployments, while Russia crippled Ukraine's healthcare network with cyber attacks. The war expanded as international allies joined, transforming Eastern Europe into a biological flashpoint where life and death merged in chaos. Russia launched a massive ground offensive, deploying tanks and infantry to retake lost territory in the Donbass. Ferocious urban battles erupted in Luhansk, with explosions shattering buildings. Ukraine countered with ambushes, using anti-tank missiles to incinerate Russian convoys. A catastrophic biolab breach contaminated water supplies, displacing millions. Neighboring nations like Poland and Romania fortified borders, while NATO deployed forces to contain the spread. The global economy staggered as sanctions disrupted gas supplies, and satellite imagery revealed vast regions cloaked in toxic smoke, marking an unprecedented phase of savage warfare. The attack's fallout triggered a global environmental crisis. Biological pathogens spread beyond borders, paralyzing healthcare systems across Europe and causing waves of deaths. Contaminated farmland led to severe food shortages. Nations rushed emergency response teams, but insurgent groups seized abandoned zones. Autonomous robots decontaminated infected areas, while relief convoys faced attacks from armed factions. Russia and Ukraine, grappling with environmental disaster, signed a temporary ceasefire. But new bio-insurgent groups emerged from the chaos. The crisis halted the war, but persistent pathogen threats and environmental collapse signaled an unstable future.
Drug ships in the Americas have become a major threat, carrying tons of cocaine and weapons through maritime routes. The U.S. Navy routinely patrols to intercept these vessels, but in 2025, a raid on a $7 billion drug ship uncovered horrifying contents, igniting a global narco-terror war. Below is the account of this incident, from a high seas interception to an outcome that stunned the world. On a moonless night in 2025, in the Indian Ocean near Somalia's coast, the U.S. Navy destroyer USS Decatur detected a $7 billion drug ship loaded with cocaine and suspicious cargo. Radar swept relentlessly, and the Decatur closed in, broadcasting demands to stop. The drug ship, armed with machine guns and RPGs, suddenly opened fire, bullets tearing into the Decatur's deck. Alarms wailed, U.S. sailors scrambled, and missiles from the destroyer screamed forward, sinking the drug ship in a massive explosion. Debris flew like a tempest, oil slicks ignited on the sea, turning the area into a fiery abyss. U.S. sailors boarded the wreck, bracing for what lay inside. As U.S. sailors boarded the sinking drug ship, they uncovered a chilling find. Beneath layers of cocaine were containers holding miniaturized nuclear weapons and guided missiles worth $7 billion, sourced from a terrorist network. A secondary explosion rocked the ship when a booby-trapped bomb detonated, forcing sailors to flee amid fire and smoke. Captives on board, forced laborers, cried for rescue in the chaos. The Navy called for backup, but the ship sank rapidly, dragging the weapons containers into the depths. Black smoke choked the sky, relentless blasts churning the sea, transforming the Indian Ocean into a chaotic war zone where every second pulsed with danger. The conflict surged into electronic terrorism warfare with terrifying speed. The terrorist network, alerted to the ship sinking, deployed hackers to attack U.S. command systems, leaking fleet positions. The U.S. retaliated by crippling terrorist servers in the Middle East, using AI-driven viruses to seize control. In the skies, terrorist drones swarmed U.S. ships, exploding in fireballs that illuminated the night. Missiles from terrorist bases targeted the U.S., but American laser defenses incinerated them in blinding flashes. The war expanded as allies joined, turning the Indian Ocean into a multi-layered flashpoint where digital and physical destruction fused in pandemonium. The terrorist network called for aid from rogue nations, triggering attacks on U.S. infrastructure in Africa and Asia. A massive explosion destroyed an oil pipeline in Nigeria, sparking fires that spread for miles.
The U.S. Navy responded with lightning raids on terrorist training camps in Somalia, using guided missiles to obliterate targets from afar. The war spilled onto borders, with ferocious battles shaking coastal cities. The global economy reeled as oil prices skyrocketed, shipping routes halted. Satellite imagery revealed massive fires and black smoke blanketing the region, marking an unprecedented phase of savage warfare. The raid's fallout triggered a global terrorism crisis. With nuclear weapons lost, terrorist groups worldwide scrambled to claim them, sparking attacks in Europe and the US. Drug and arms prices soared, fueling crime waves. Nations urgently collaborated to hunt the missing weapons, with international special forces raiding hideouts. Autonomous robots cleared radioactive zones, while relief convoys faced kidnappings. The US and affected nations formed anti-terrorism pacts, but chaos persisted, with small-scale nuclear detonations signaling a new era of global terrorism. The Ukraine-Russia war has seen numerous sabotage operations, with Russian railways serving as critical targets to disrupt supply lines. Ukraine often employs mines and intelligence for ambushes, while Russia guards its trains with special forces. In 2025, a Ukrainian mine attack on a Russian railway, flipping a train carrying 1,000 tons of diesel, shifted the conflict's tide, shocking the world. Below is the account of this incident, from a covert ambush to an outcome that left everyone reeling. On a frigid night in 2025, along a railway near the Belgorod border, a Russian train loaded with 1,000 tons of diesel, vital fuel for military operations, rumbled through the darkness. Ukrainian special forces had planted mines along the tracks, waiting for the perfect moment. As the train roared forward at high speed, the mines detonated, flipping the cars in a chaotic crash, debris flying like a tempest. Leaking diesel ignited from sparks, erupting into a radiant fireball. Alarms wailed, Russian crews fled in panic, but the devastation was immense. The battlefield became a fiery abyss, setting the stage for a brutal railway war. Russia retaliated instantly, launching Iskander missiles from nearby bases, pounding Ukrainian positions in Kharkiv with devastating force. Russian Su-34 jets screamed in, dropping bombs on Ukrainian bunkers, shaking the city. Ukraine countered with lightning ambushes on Russian railways, using drones to incinerate supply trains. A ferocious air battle erupted, with jets from both sides clashing in deadly pursuits. Black smoke choked the sky, relentless blasts trembling the ground, transforming the border into a chaotic war zone where every moment pulsed with danger. The conflict surged into electromagnetic warfare with terrifying speed. Russia deployed electromagnetic pulse (EMP) weapons to cripple Ukrainian radar systems near the border, disrupting communications and downing aircraft mid-flight. Ukraine retaliated with high-energy microwave devices, destroying Russian radar stations near Crimea. Cyber attacks from both sides paralyzed command networks, with Russian hackers exposing Ukrainian troop movements and Ukraine seizing control of Russian coastal defenses. In the skies, AI-driven drones collided, bursting into fireballs that illuminated the night. The war expanded as allies joined, turning the border into a multi-layered flashpoint where invisible pulses and fire fused in chaos. Russia launched a massive ground offensive, aiming to seize Ukrainian cities to cut off supply routes. Tank convoys rolled in, sparking ferocious urban battles. Ukraine countered with rapid ambushes, using guided missiles to incinerate Russian armor. A colossal explosion destroyed a Russian munitions depot, triggering floods and displacing thousands. Neighboring nations were drawn in, with Poland bolstering borders. The global economy reeled as oil prices soared from disrupted transport routes, and satellite imagery showed vast regions shrouded in smoke, marking an unprecedented phase of savage warfare. The attack's fallout triggered a global humanitarian crisis. Destroyed infrastructure forced millions to flee, flooding borders into Europe and Russia. Refugee camps overflowed, diseases spreading in the chaos as international aid struggled to keep up. The US and Europe organized emergency relief, but insurgent groups exploited the turmoil to rise. Autonomous robots cleared contaminated zones, while relief convoys delivered supplies under fire. Russia and Ukraine, facing humanitarian disaster, were forced into a temporary ceasefire, but new rebel factions emerged from the chaos. The crisis paused the war, but swelling refugee flows and persistent disease threats signaled an unstable future.